Hi there, Jay. Congratulations being part of this movie, which is very significant for Filipinos, Americans, and as well representation in Hollywood. Talk about how important this project is for you.
I I feel like I've gotten to make a lot of comedy films that have luckily worked commercially. And so when I met Jo Koy, I said to him, you know, we can make a movie which is just about representation and how nice Filipinos are, or we can make a movie that works commercially as a comedy and put Filipinos in it. And then if that can succeed, we'll do way more for representation than just making a nice, sweet little, you know, movie with a lot of Filipinos in it. And so that was the goal. The goal was entertain the country and try to make a story that would fit for every culture. You know, like, you know, white people, Mexicans, black people, you know, Chinese, of course, Filipino.
And how did you meet Jo Koy?
Well, you know, we're both stand-up comics, so we've been around each other, but we'd never really met. And so Amblin, which is the producing company of this film, basically put us together on a Zoom because it was the middle of the pandemic. And he's you know, I'm a big Jo Koy fan, but he's also a big fan of the films I've made. And so we, you know, he felt suddenly comfortable that I said, you know, you don't have to worry about it. All you got to do is know your lines and help us shape the script between now and when we shoot it. I will make sure you look good. I will make sure the movie makes sense. And so he was able to relax and sort of, you know, focus on what he thought was funny.
Mm-hmm. And how is it being Steven Spielberg being involved in this project?
Well, he's the filmmaker, right? And I, you know, when I talk to a filmmaker, we have conversations that are vastly different than when I talk to a producer or a writer or something. We are very specific to the frame and what's in there and what this actor can do and what, you know, and so it was nice to get notes from a filmmaker who I respect so immensely.
And what was the most challenging scene to do or filming this, because it was during COVID time and pandemic time?
Well, there's a scene in the church where everybody sort of convinces Joe to go up and say a few words. And so, you know, it was like this church fit 400 people, and we couldn't have 400 people there. So we had to sort of use a lot of visual, you know, tricks and effects to make it look like the crowd was big. But then on the flip side of it, we needed Jo Koy to do effectively a stand-up routine about the things that were going on in the movie, which is a high-risk gambit. But I mean, I'm a stand-up and Joe's a stand-up, and so I, you know, along with Kate Angelo and Ken Chang, the two writers, I just sort of wrote it as though I was doing it as a stand-up routine, like that particular. You know, Kate wrote a version, and then I was like, well, this is how we would do it if I were a stand-up. And then we gave it to Joe, and he goes, okay, well, the way I would do it as a stand-up is something like this. And then he rewrote that to do make it his own stand-up way. And you know, when I was watching it while we were shooting it, I'm like, oh my God, this guy is so incredibly funny.
And how were you able to manage to get Tiffany Haddish and Lou Diamond Phillips and Tia Carrera?
Tia Carrera and Joe were friends from before, and he kept telling me how funny she was. And I'm like, I don't know, she's super sexy lady and all that stuff. But she's never, I mean, this is sort of the whole point of this thing. It's like the problem with the past, and I'm grateful for the opportunities we've had in the past, but Tia Carrera is one of the funny people you'll ever meet. And she's never really had a chance to be anything but the sexy girl. And so here we are, she's got a chance to be a funny person. She gets all sorts of laughs in the movie. And Lou Diamond Phillips was like, are you telling me I get to play a Filipino in it? And he goes, amen. So, and he was great too. He's also a very funny guy. He's always been so dramatic, but he has good rhythm, and he's funny, and he's wonderful. And then Tiffany Haddish and Joe came up together, like when they were young comics, when Tiffany was still living in her car. Like Joe had a baby, and Tiffany would take care of the baby when Joe would go on stage at the Comedy Store or the Laugh Factory, maybe the Laugh Factory, and then you know, so they were been together since they were teenagers. So when it came time to do this movie, Joe, you know, she's like, I'll come for you, and I'll come up there for you and do a couple scenes. And you know, she had to come up there and quarantine for 2 weeks in an apartment where she couldn't leave the apartment. Like, that's how good of friends they are. And she's, you know, she really delivered for us in this movie.
And for your character, was that an inspiration of one particular person or an amalgamation of different agents?
Well, one of the writers, Kate Angelo, has an agent who she's convinced constantly hangs up on her unnecessarily. So she's like, he's constantly going over Mulholland Drive, or he's constantly going into the Malibu Tunnel, and he just hangs up on me. And she goes, I'm going to get him back.
That's so funny. And so what's your next project coming up after this Easter Sunday?
Well, I want to make a movie that is sort of about the premise of it is I play like a geneticist in New York City, and I fall out of a marriage and I go down to Austin, Texas, and I impregnate a white pro-life Republican woman. And so the movie is about this sort of multicultural moment, but it's also about political correctness and what you can say and what you can't say, and it's a little bit of a resistance to that. And it's about a little bit about politics because her dad's a hardcore Republican. And so I want to make a movie that is like friendly to both sides, but it's like a direct sort of the bullseye is the political correct movement and just this political moment. It's called American Indian.
Sounds funny. Thank you very much for your time.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.